I can't wait to show you how I upcycled this $3.50 thrift store find into a treasure of memories. You see, recently a friend and I were sharing our dilemma over how best to let go of the unused items we all have in our homes, but the struggle when they involve pieces of great sentimental value such as grandmother's china. It inspired me to find a way to merge a self-care picnic for one with the way of remembering my Mama Loretta. The remaining pieces of her china can now become a gift of love to others. So this picnic basket lining, when I picked it up, was simply material. The bottom had been threaded in with some sort of line that reminded me of fishing line, but the top, it had been glued around the edges. So I did have to get a case knife to remove this. The other side was very easy. This one you just needed to be a little bit more careful of, because as you pull, you want to make sure that you don't in fact damage the basket itself or the weave. And once you get the lining out, you can see what it looks like in the inside and even how the buckle is attached. So I gave mine a thorough cleaning and then decided I wanted to put some polyacrylic on it. I think it made a huge difference. Now, I cannot emphasize enough how important these measurements are. Measure, measure, and then measure again. Because the closer your measurements are, the better that your insides are going to look for your basket. This is a no-sew project, but because it is made from material wrapped around foam core that fits tightly into the basket, it needs to fit pretty tightly in order for it to look its best and be durable. It will add some structure, and here you can see that I have all the pieces cut and labeled. Now, I should have labeled them on both sides, and you'll see that I do that as I go along. So the first thing you're going to do is just cover each of these pieces with the fabric that you've chosen. I chose a gray seersucker check fabric. It is very light. It was easy to work with, but you could use a duck cloth or any kind of canvas, I suppose. A cotton would work nice. I think if I had to do it again, I may not pick a linear pattern like this, because you did have to be a little bit more careful about how you lined everything up. Now I'm just applying a spray adhesive over the foam core. Be very careful. You want to have a nice, thin, even layer across the board with no puddling, because particularly in these thin fabrics, you can get bleeding through, and that's not a nice look. So just take your time and spray very carefully. Now, when you begin gathering in those sides, you do want to pull them so that they wrap tightly around the sides, but not so tightly that they begin to pull and distort your fabric. That can happen very quickly on this thinner fabric. Now, I just cut my corners at a 45-degree angle. You may find an easier way to do it. I could have removed additional excess material, but this got the job done and made it neat. Don't worry too much that the back looks like this, because we will be covering it later in the process. We have a lot more steps to go before this is done, and it's going to end up looking a lot uglier before it looks any prettier. But this method is the same one you're going to use for each of the 6 boards that you would have in a basket like this. You may have less depending on if your basket has a lid, what basket it is that you might have chosen. And maybe you have one at home. There are several times I have run across them at the thrift store though, so keep your eye out. Buying one can be quite expensive. Alright, so you saw there what it looks like when it's covered. And finally, I want to do a dry fitting. Now, we're not going to glue anything in at this point because we're not done with the pieces. We just want to make sure that everything fits snugly, that you're happy with how everything looks. This is the time to make any modifications. Now, just like any picnic basket, you're going to have to decide what it is that you want in it and what pieces you want to showcase. In my case, since this was in fact a memory box, in fact, for housing some of my memories with my grandmother, including her china, I wanted that to sit foremost. I picked up that crystal goblet at the thrift store as well. I have the silver wrapped in a napkin, and I think that those are the things that I want at the top of my box, so that when I open it, those are the first things that I see. You may have a different idea. I would caution you against using a glass that doesn't have a stem in the top with the method that we're going to use, which is using these eyelets. Now, if you've never worked with them before, and I have not, they are not easy to do the first couple of times, but once you get the hang of it, they are very easy. I would recommend making a practice board. Your kit is going to come with both eyelet pieces and the tool that you need in order to make your eyelets. I would tell you that you can pick them up at Hobby Lobby for around $3.50, and with your 40% off coupon, then of course you wouldn't have even that in it. I really like how it turned out with these eyelets. I was really happy with how this turned out. Now, here you can see that I've placed the dish on the board upside down and opposite from the way that it will sit. And that's so I can make the marks for where I'm going to put these eyelets around the plate. You can mark it just in 4 different places, because you're actually going to do like a cross with your ribbon once the eyelets go in. I ended up going back and doing the whole plate because of that linear fabric. Again, you've just got to be a little bit more careful making sure that everything is lined up. And so I needed to see how that was best going to work. I'm finding the smallest points on the goblet to pick to tie off so it can hold it secure. And then finally, when I'm using the pin here on the silverware piece, you'll see that I'm making it just ever so slightly larger. And that is because on my test pieces, I did find that it worked much better if you gave yourself just a little bit of space on each side, so that can really bind that cloth and hold those silver pieces in. Now I'm just going to go back over and decide exactly where I want those eyelets to be on the plate side. Now that I can see the whole outline of the plate, I can gauge better with my fabric and get something that is straighter and just a nicer finished product. Okay, so I'm not even gonna lie, the eyelets for me were the hardest part of this project, but as I said, after doing a few on a test board, it wasn't any problem. One of the tricks that I found was to find an instrument like a pin that was the same diameter as your finished top piece, because your deeper eyelet goes on the fabric side. And these that I'm using are a quarter inch, I'm sorry. Now you'll place it on the little rubber piece that comes in your kit, and you'll feel it when it sort of clicks in. You'll take the shallower back piece and again, feel for it, and you'll feel when it sort of clicks in with the one below it, although it will not be attached, of course. That's where your piece for the top will come, and you'll hit it with hopefully a hammer a lot less rusty than mine. Make sure that you clean up any extra threads or materials in between. There are instructions on the eyelet kit, so I would just recommend, again, going over them, doing a dummy board. So now we're going to get ready to really start to dress things up. And what you're going to do is begin to place your ribbon. Now I'm starting with the top piece, and I'm starting where the plate, the saucer, and the cup are going to be. You'll notice again I have 4 eyelets, and those eyelets are so that I can run the ribbon at a diagonal and hopefully give some strength to the piece's stability. You want to set the china and make sure that you have plenty of ribbon to tie, to make a bow if that's what you're choosing to do, and then also to run across the underneath of the board and through the other side. So what I chose to do is, once I found a length I was happy with, I just tripled that amount, and that gave me plenty of ribbon to securely tie this in. I did find later that it is a little bit more helpful to cut your ribbon with pinking shears. It gives it a little nicer end, and while it won't keep it from fraying, it definitely will help limit the amount that it does fray. I chose an organza ribbon. You could use any ribbon and any color of your choosing, so long as it has enough structural strength in it to hold these items in, because especially the plate, cup, and saucer, those are quite heavy, so there needs to be some strength in your ribbon. I chose mine because it was white with just the ever so hint flecks of silver, just like my grandma Loretta's hair. She had the most beautiful white hair that was always glistening, is the only way I can describe it. It was just so white, it was silver. No gray in it, no yellow, just beautiful, beautiful white. And this ribbon, the way it sparkles a little bit, it just reminds me of her hair. I'm making sure that the back is not twisted. You will want it to lay flat, so you'll have to forgive the videography here. It's hard to film yourself while you are performing the task, but hopefully you're getting the idea, and you can see here now that I'm working that ribbon out so that it will lay flat. And once I have it in place in the way that I want it, I'm first going to lay down just a bead of hot glue. I'm just going to caution you here, if you use organza ribbon and hot glue, you might not want to run your fingers across it the way that you see me do in a moment. It was quite hot. I did get smart and just use the side of an old pen to tap it in. Now, hot glue is great, but for real durability and lasting strength, I'm going to recommend that you also pick up some sort of adhesive similar to an E6000. The reason is that though it takes quite a while for it to dry, about 24 hours, it really has strength far beyond the capabilities of just your hot glue gun. And you want to make sure that if you're holding something as precious as your grandmother's china, that it will in fact hold. So I'm just taking a dab of the E6000 and placing it on the end of that old pen and running it underneath the ribbon close to the eyelet, so I make sure that that area in particular is very well reinforced. There may be other glues out there that I'm not familiar with that would work in the same way, that may not take as long to dry. If you know of one of those glues, please let me know in the comment. I would love to try it and see if it's something that I could use when I don't have that long to wait for something to dry. Now you can see I just did the same thing with the other ribbon, crossing it as an X in the back, making sure to apply that E6000 right at the eyelets to enforce it and make it strong. You're going to do this exact same process with any eyelets that you want to place, whether they are across the top for your what I call showcase pieces, or in the bottom. And you will see I did put a couple of eyelets in the bottom to hold my drinking glass, since it is straight up and down. Now I told you we want to finish this off and make it look pretty, because in my particular basket anyway, the weave is not really loose, but it is loose enough to be able to kind of see through it. And so you just want what is being seen to be attractive. And of course the back of this right now is not attractive. So I've taken a piece of fabric. You could take a piece of coordinating fabric, however you want to do it. And I just cut it a little bit smaller than the size of the piece that I was working on, and trimmed it with my pinking shears to just give it a more finished look. Applied some hot glue. And laid that fabric down. Now you are going to have some bumps and lumps from the ribbons. Those won't be nearly as noticeable, especially once it's weighted down and it dries. Again, this is really just to help make it look as nice as it can to the eye, should you be able to see any little sneak peek of it through the basket. Now here we have just a dry run. Before I put the top piece in the top and glue it in, I wanted you to see how it all worked together, how each piece was tied with the ribbon. Now those things are removed. I am working on the top piece here again, and I am applying the E6000 and I'm spreading it out. I do not want it to run underneath the basket weave and cause any kind of mess. I want to keep that nice. I have something planned for the top, and so glue would get in the way of that. And I will tell you, I also applied a little hot glue because that does help it to set before the E6000 dries. However, right there my glue gun broke. Here it is though, once it is in place and glued in. I thought I could use the pieces that were for the weight. While they were there, I applied both inside and outside these felt pieces just to help with scratching. My husband suggested I probably did not have enough weight on that lid in order to make sure that it was properly secured for what I was carrying, so we made some modifications. Not so pretty, but it worked. All right, so I have a wonderful picnic basket for two that John and I take out, and it actually came with the basket attached. It was a wonderful find, but quite expensive. I did not pay the price that it called for. I actually ran across it for a much, much reduced price. But I know picnic baskets are very expensive, and the more accessories they have, the more expensive they are. So I wanted to give my basket a little bit of that luxurious look, a little bit more expensive look, I guess. And I wanted to be able to attach a blanket. I also wanted to be able to use ribbon, and that meant not permanently attaching the ribbon. So I had to think for a little bit about how might be best to do this. And as you can see, I decided to weave my ribbon through the top of the basket weave carefully with this case knife. Now it looks like I'm being forceful, and I guess somewhat you are, but you have to be careful, particularly on these old baskets, because you do not want to break the weave. But this gives you the ability to adjust for the thickness of a blanket. Sometimes you may want to take a heavier or lighter one. It also allows you the ability to remove it and replace it relatively easily, or if you were using an heirloom ribbon or something of that effect that you needed to take out and wash. This will not permanently attach it, but it will keep the blanket that you choose secure. And you can see how it just is woven with the weave of the basket. You will not be able to then go over to the other side and put your ribbon in exactly the same place. You need to find the run that is exactly like the one that you just did, which will leave it off center on the top of your basket. Looking at it from this angle, the other way it will be centered, and I think that just provides a more stable blanket. But however you decide to do it is up to you. I'm snipping the ends off with those pinking shears, and I'm making sure that both sides are the same length, and just making any last minute adjustments that need to be made. The ribbon I used on the top here is a satin ribbon, And it does, I think, will probably hold up a little bit better outside like this than the organza. My goodness, I make a lot of adjustments, don't I? All right, so here we have both sides in, and you can see what I was talking about the offset. You may or may not have that. It will just really depend on the size of your basket and exactly how it is woven. Because we're getting ready to fill it up. Okay, so here are the things that are going to be in the basket all the time, from toothpicks to corkscrews. I've got a little accessory bag, some food storage. And then of course the highlight will be my grandmother's china. I'm throwing in a little bouquet of some faux flowers so that no matter what time of year or where I'm at, I can always make sure to have something beautiful to look at. That crystal goblet, my drinking glass, and since I will be having tea, or you may want to have coffee, you need a thermos to carry that hot water in. That way, even if you start in the morning and you're going to do this on your lunch break at work, you have a way to keep that water warm for your little bit of time that you're going to have to yourself later in the afternoon. That particular bottle, I think, has a 12-hour for keeping beverages warm. So plenty of time if you pack that in the morning and want to hit a park at lunch. Okay, so here are the eyelets that I installed at the sides, one on each corner in the back there to hold the glass. Now I'm not going to be jostling it around, probably a whole lot in upside down, things like that, but I do want to keep that glassware in there as securely as I can. And the eyelet process for that was the same. So now that that ware is loaded up, we're going to get ready to put the blanket on. And before we do, I'm going to let you know that this basket is not very large. Of course, it is intended to be a picnic basket for one. I wanted to be able to have more than one cup of tea while I lounged in the afternoon. You may not have time, I understand that. But so one of the things that I did was take that thermos and wrapped it in the blanket. I folded the blanket to where it was about the same size as that thermos and then wrapped it around. I picked up that thermos at Ross for like $8.99. I think it's a beautiful design. I loved it, the way it coordinated with all of the things that I had here, but it also provides a little bit of structure to the blanket, and I liked that too. So it doesn't take up room on the inside, and there's plenty of room for as many glasses of tea as you might like. You do want to pull these ribbons firm when you're tying the blanket, but not so tight that it pulls against that. I know I harp on that, but I actually did, in fact, break one of the pieces of the weave, and it is not in a spot that is highly noticeable, but since we are working in those spots that are, just be extremely careful. Okay, so for my lunch today, I'm bringing my spinach salad with some cranberries and almonds, a little egg, cheese. I've got some mini savory tartlets, some goat cheese drizzled with honey, some fresh blackberries, a peach, and some bottled water. Now that accessory bag, it came from Ulta a couple of years ago, and I keep those little free items that come like that because they actually make really great storage compartments. These are the things, again, that I'll be keeping in the basket at all times. So I have a coaster, some hand sanitizer. I've got the screw, for the wine. I can't think of the name of it right now. A couple of votive candles. And in a minute, you'll see I have the salad dressing for today's meal. I've also got these great mint toothpicks. There's that salad dressing. It's a honey Dijon for that spinach salad. And then my skills with the videoing, I promise I'm working on them. They hopefully will get better. My salt and pepper. And I was disappointed in these. They do make much more beautiful miniature salt and pepper shakers. There's a lemonade. I just could not find one. So that is something I'll be keeping my eye out to add to my bag. There was my tea. And then here you can't see, but that's some sweetener and some cream. So those are going to go in the bag, and I've got a few other little surprise things that I'm going to put in there later that you'll see at the picnic. Alright, so I'm loaded up. I have got a half bottle of wine. I'm ready to go. Now I realize that if you're a working girl, that particular item isn't going to work for you, but you could always substitute sparkling cider to get the effect. So I've made it over to the park, and wouldn't you know, as luck would have it, the thunderclouds came. And it really got overcast. It's so difficult to see, and I'm so disappointed because the light was out. How well that little area just turned out to be so cozy. I went to a new park. It has just recently reopened as a park. It had originally been our cultural arts center. They've put in that new amphitheater in the back. They're working on a children's playground. There's arbors, green space all around the buildings, new trees, lots of flowers, benches and walks. It was just a nice, quiet, relaxing place that would have been perfect if the rain hadn't come. But that's okay. I enjoyed the time that I had there, and next time I know I'll get to enjoy a little bit longer, and that makes me happy. So you see I brought out some pillows. I've got our blanket. I have a little wooden bedside table. I just took some of the extra fabric I had left over from the basket and made a little tablecloth. I've got my bicycle and more flowers. And here is our first course. So this was a cheese and fruit course. You can see here we've got that nice bottle of rosé, and I don't know if you can see it down there, but that's a picture of my grandma Loretta. Oh, there she is. And there is the cheese, some of the fresh fruit, and the wine, and the first piece of china that I'll be using today. Oh gosh, I miss her. She is such a wonderful lady, and I'll tell you what, she always had the most beautiful bright red lips. And in that picture, though you can't tell, her lips are red, and it just makes me happy to spend a little time looking at that picture and just thinking back on some wonderful memories we had together. So the main course is the salad and those tarts. We've got some lemonade and our bottled water. Back there are those sad salt and pepper shakers. And of course, then we have the salad dressing. And finally, we're going to end the day with a little tea and a couple of macarons, and you can see we just did a little bit of rearranging. A lot of these pieces you see in the each of the different courses. When you get home and get everything washed up, everything I had packs neatly inside of the box, including those flowers. So if I want a picnic in January, I still have something pretty to look at. And I close it up. And until the next time, that china's protected, my memories are protected. And I still have a few flowers I can arrange and sprinkle throughout the house so that the memory of my picnic and my day reminiscing about Mama Loretta can go on throughout my week.